Doesn't have to be writing, but ideally it would be, because we are here for books.
You want the mic?
I mean, actually, that's something I thought about recently, because the book I'm writing, and it would have been possibly, I don't know if anyone will know this, Biker Grove. Biker! Whoa! Ooh! Biker! Yeah, and there was like a gay kiss, and yeah, I think they just kissed on the lip very discreetly, and it was like, not that I thought that, well, I probably did, but just that the culture was like, that's outrageous. So yeah, Biker Grove. Weirdly, weird reference.
I think Biker Grove was pretty. It was designed to deal with those sorts of topics to open them up. I think that's a good first reference.
Yeah, because it was like this, what was it, community centre. You never really seen the young people in school, and it was like out of school. It's an interesting thing. And I was doing a bit of research in it, and because the book I'm writing, and I was like, oh yeah, that did have an impact on you. Your big sort of 90s TV screen, the big boxes, and you're like, take me back to the 90s. Yeah.
It's also like delightfully chaste. We peck on the lips.
Yeah. It was, we were in a cinema, and they just had a wee peck, and we were like, wow, that's groundbreaking.
So here, Lakshmi, did you have any groundbreaking pecks on the cheek?
No, unfortunately not. I think I'm at the moment obsessed with mermaids, and so the furthest my memory goes back to is reading this book called The Deep, which didn't come out that. But it's about mermaids that are gender bendy, queer loving, history holding, and ancestor of, they're born, they are the children that were, oh God, how do I put this into a sentence? They are the children that evolved from slaves that were pushed up off ships during the transatlantic slave trade, but they evolved to become mermaids. And I think the idea of evolution and morphing and being gender bendy, queer gals, I think that really struck a chord with me.
And also just mermaids are perennially a queer favourite, I think.
Exactly, yeah.
Suki?
I love that book also, The Deep by River Solomon. Very cool. I don't know, it's kind of funny because like when I was thinking about like positive in any way representation in media, I actually couldn't think of like anything from my childhood. Like I was thinking of like the first queer author I knew being Oscar Wilde. And famously, like, it didn't really work out that great for him. And then I was like, oh, what about Tara from Buffy? And then I was like, no! So, I think it's great that it really makes you think, wow, we have some great work now, that isn't so tragic, which is really nice.
I totally agree, and I think, because you both come from Northern Ireland, I think in Northern Ireland it sometimes felt even further away, like something happened on the mainland, but not here.
Yeah, that was wild.
I also feel like I didn't really have much of a reference point for anything queer until I came to Scotland.
Well, because everybody queer in Northern Ireland like leaves as soon as they legally, physically can. Yeah, the place is absolutely vacant. They've all moved to Glasgow, so.
Hence, we're here.
Yeah, right. What are we doing?
we are the face of brain drain.
Yeah.
Just to speak about the pieces you actually got in the anthology, Colin, I was going to start with you. Before getting involved with the Queer Words Project, you'd be more well known as a poet. I was just wondering, how did you find the shift from poetry to memoir? Was it challenging? Were there any surprises? Was it fun?
Yeah, it has been fun because prose you can just, I don't know, write. It's not less the precision, or I don't quite know what I mean. It's been fun. There's a lot of going through my mind about the ethics of like sharing your private life and that involves other people and how to negotiate that, and thinking if it's ethical or not, and what is it that writers are the prostitutes of experience, and I need
You
to
said
be
that?
yeah. Someone said that writers are the prostitutes of experience.
I think if you don't know who said it, you can just claim it.
Yeah. Google, somebody Google. But I thought that's great. So you need to be careful when you're doing sex work that you know, you don't upset people. You know, so yeah, that it's really interesting because like it's much more personal, directly, explicitly about me, which I'm not sure. I feel uncomfortable about that, and I'm like, well, I'm going to go to that then, and I don't want it to be like a misery memoir, but it is, yeah, it's more of a confusion, ambivalence memoir with elements of misery and shame and things. So yeah, I'm really enjoying the move from poetry into prose, and it's going to be a full book, the Book of a Fool as well. Yeah, so no, it's great, it's good, and it's a lot of work. So
I imagine it would be.
yes,
'Cause poetry, from the point of view of someone that is more commonly writes prose, does seem easy. They're very short.
yeah, well that's it. The brevity of it and the page, and there's a kind of whereas and they're going to construct the narrative, and it's really it's a lot to handle, and it's taking its time and difficult to manage. But I like the challenge.
Great. Lakshmi, you next. I feel like I'm on blind date.
Yeah, we're even sat like that.
Surprise, surprise. Completely
Who are
different
you
show.
gonna pick?
So Reclaim, Retreat, Rescue is one of the more experimental pieces in the anthology. It plays around a lot with form and voice and history as well. I wanted to ask just where does that sense of playfulness come from, and why did you want to utilize it so much in this piece?
Yeah, I think the idea of a conversation actually came from the conversations I had with my mentor from the project, Mei Jiangsu. Yeah, it was going to be quite a traditional piece in the beginning, although, well, as traditional as I can get it to be in my style, but yeah, something about like having these conversations about the piece, and then we were just like, why can't it just be a conversation? And like the sessions we had were quite playful and silly and sweet, and yeah, I wanted to bring some of that into it, maybe like, you know, to bring different threads, because we would like to start talking about one thing and then like it would unravel and grow and evolve, and I feel like that was really what led to this piece. And I also had a lot of fun putting it together because I wrote out everything that came into my mind, and then I printed it out, cut it up into pieces, and then collaged it by hand, which is really fun. And like, yeah, it really helped to like break out of the monotony of writing on a laptop, and yeah, that kind of helped weave it into that.
Do you still have the collage?
I do, yeah.
I'd love to see it.
Really?
Yeah, I want to see that. I mean, I'm
yeah, it was
I'm
fun.
into collage as like an art form. Anyway, this is just us. I would love to see
Yeah,
that.
it was really fun. It's a great way to write poetry if you're like, how do I make this perfect? It's just to go blah, and then just cut it up and just move it around and see how that feels. To like actually touch it and like, yeah, feel more tactile with it.
How many different versions were there before you settled on this one?
God. Well, I had only 3 sessions with me, but I am a drafter, so I like to, again, blah, and then go in and edit. So there were quite a few sessions. Initially, it was going to be like 3 different voices separate to each other before they like merged into a conversation, and then there were going to be more people speaking, and then I was like, I don't think I can hold all of these experiences in the limited pages. Yeah, too many. That's the answer.
Perfect answer. Always too many. And down to suitor number 3. Suki, even though Holden Thou is about protest and politics and police brutality as well, spoilers, but it's also great. Not police brutality story. It's also a romance with its tongue like very firmly in its cheek, and I wanted to ask, was that balance easy to strike for the piece, and why did you want to tell this particular story with that sort of levity?
I think it came very naturally because it was kind of built around the character of Judas, so it felt very natural for him to be or think he is funny, and like be sort of playful and irreverent. Yeah, I kind of like I really wanted to write a character like that who was kind of like awful but like hopefully fun. Like just from other like queer books I'd read, sort of that I took inspiration from, like Paul Takes the Form of a Mortal Girl, and Midnight Cowboy to an extent, and Johnny Appleseed and Love Leda. I kind of saw this like archetype of like a sort of like gay man who did embody like a lot of these things. So it felt natural, and I also kind of felt like for me, like adapting the Bible, I was like, I am not going to take this seriously, like fuck that, like, because my first book was also really inspired by like Christian mythology, and I remember somebody like turning me a creative writing course and being like, really seriously, like, have you read the Bible? No, though, and I was like, no, fuck that, like, I don't need to read it when it's like shaped our society and my entire life, and you know the situation I grew up in so intensely. I feel like I don't owe it to the Bible to read it, frankly. Like every other Christian writer, I'm gonna just pick what I like, and that's the version. So that was kind of how it kind of ended up like that. So yeah, felt kind of natural. And yeah, also a lot of it is kind of chiming with what you're saying, Colin, is a lot of it is honestly based on my own life. Like all the police brutality stuff, I feel like it's quite important to say, like, all of that is directly lifted out of things that happened in Glasgow last year. So it just felt kind of, it would be too much if there was no light in any of that.
But I think it also I think the two very strong social narratives of police as moral good, and also the idea of like the Bible as this unquestionable, unmakefunnable sort of institution that we're just surrounded by. I think it was really interesting having both of those kind of smushed together, and just seeing what came out.
There'll be more smushing as I continue to write more.
Is it going to be developed into a longer piece?
Yeah, I'm working on it. I'm going to make it like a novella or short novel. So I'm working towards that now. So more to come. I won't tell you what happens in the end.
On the subject of what else is in the book, we've all had a chance to read it, and I was wondering if there was anything that particularly resonated with you, or if there's anything you'd just like to sing the praises of, and really put a spotlight on, to let our audience know what to run to first.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth reading, I know, because then you spotlight someone, what about everyone else? But Dykes on a Train, yeah, great. There's
For context, for those of you who haven't read it yet, which might be the majority, it
Yes.
is what it says on the tin.
Yeah, it's really, I like that. It was comic and just insightful. And where is it? One that still strikes me, Sublet. That River.
I find it really interesting that's one that you gravitated to, because it feels a lot like creative non-fiction, or perhaps even memoir.
Yeah.
And pulls one of the most masterful bait and switches I've read in a long time, which I'm not going to spoil, but it's just tremendous.
But those particularly stuck out. But it's well worth a read. Shower scene as well, and I won't say too much.
Just on Sublet, I was also going to say that. So River writes, and it's the perspective of the protagonist who moves in with a flatmate that they kind of are obsessed with because the flatmate's really sexy and cool. Now, River is my flatmate, so I can only assume that this was taken from our real life living situation, and it's also a great story. So.
That's a pure question.
Have you
Oh.
spoken to River about this?
I read it like when they. I read it before it was submitted, and obviously thought it was great. And I mean, I thought it was just too sensitive to obviously speak aloud. No, I'm kidding. The person is not based on me, but it's a really great story, and it is actually inspired by our real life landlord, who does not come off greatly in this. So yeah, that was kind of funny to see in print.
I've not read the book. Except for the pieces that Colin and Suki's written.
I appreciate that. Keeping it real.
So if more of the writers could come into my life, then I can slowly work my way through the book. Yeah. But no, read it. Their pieces are great, as you've heard.
I thank you. I admire that honesty. Now it's just time for the audience section. I'm just going to check we've got time on our side. We do? Yeah, we do. Cool. One or two questions from the audience, perhaps? Yes, at the back. Do I run down to give you the microphone?
Just repeat the question after this.
Okay, cool.
So this is a question for you, Ryan. I was at the 2019 launch of We Were Always Here, and I was wondering what felt different about putting this anthology together versus the last one.
So the question is, what felt different about putting this anthology together compared to We Were Always Here in 2019? I don't think this will shock anyone, but the political landscape compared to 2019 is slightly different. And we talked about this a lot before you started even applying for the funding to do it. We did question, like, do we do it? I think when we were thinking about starting it and doing it, we were wondering, like, would this be putting a target on anyone's back to get them involved when the discussion there nationally and internationally around queerness is getting a bit sticky? And then we realized, like, we don't want to let people who don't want to listen to us set the conversation. We're not talking to them. And so I think the title, Fear Salvage, Michael found it in a poem by, oh my god, he's one of the most famous, Edwin Morgan. His name just left my brain. And it's about watching his mother be so strong and keep so much of the house together. And then one little thing pushes her over the edge. And then she has to build it all back up again and be strong again. And I kind of felt that's kind of where we are at the moment, where we all have to be strong, and we're all going to have, like, those moments that push us over the edge. But the point is you get back up again. That's what felt different compared to 2019, where we felt like we had made it. We felt like we had arrived. And I think also, looking back, we were a little bit, and this is me talking in generalizations, but in general maybe a little bit complacent. Carrie Marshall's piece speaks to this quite directly, with a focus on trans rights and how trans lives in the public sphere are just getting narrower and narrower. We have a right to be angry, I think. And this collection is angrier than We Were Always Here. But also, I think we need to, like, really look into who's on our side and protect and cherish that. And that was really the focus of this piece when we were thinking what to put in it. It wasn't so much patting ourselves on the back for having done so good, it was patting everyone on the back, like saying, we can get through this. Which sounds really, like, serious and depressing, but also just, like, it feels great to have it out there. It feels like such a good piece of collective queer survival to put out in the world. Even the pieces that aren't even focused on that, the fact that we've got it out there now, it feels great. Second question. there is one? No, in that case, just one last question for the readers, which is annoyingly on the fold of my little script. Where would you like to see queer literature go next? What's missing, or what do you want more of? It's a big. It is a big question.
I think I do. Yeah. I don't know. Yeah, maybe that is. Yeah. No, but that is my answer. I want more about uncertainty and ambivalence and confusion, about sexuality or whatever. Those stories of, often the stories they're often shame or sad, terrible stories, or like Heartstopper, which is Brown, which is so optimistic and so like supportive and helpful. But I just, for me anyway, my experience like with someone of ambivalent and mixed feelings and ambiguity around aspects of sexuality and developmental trauma when you're younger and developing a sense of self, and how that leaves you confused, deeply confused. I think that is interesting. I'm all for confusion and ambivalence and an acceptance of like the granularity of people's identities and sexualities.
That's an excellent word in your accent.
If that makes any sense, the tiny details. Yeah, I hope that makes sense to some extent.
I think like any degree of like removing simplicity from the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, it doesn't necessarily need to lead to more confusion.
Yeah,
like
that's true.
It opens up space to be like, there's stuff in here that we didn't know was true about ourselves. Which is exciting to discover if it's good. If it's bad, smother it.
Yeah, but it leads to acceptance and understanding and common humanity, things like that. So,
Lakshmi, Suki, what were we missing from queer literature as of this moment in time?
That was not the original question.
What do you want more of?
Yeah, I think, I think queer literature, if I am thinking what I want from it, maybe that's not what is needed from it, but I would like to see queer literature really like dig into the foundations of like queerness and the radical traditions of queerness, and not get subsumed into heteronormativity as everything else does, and go back to its roots a bit more, and also be happy doing that. Don't know how to balance the two, but like everything I write is so bleak, but I'm like, I want good, hopeful stuff, but also something that rejects the heteronormative conditions that we just get sucked into so easily.
And also, I think it's worth saying, I don't think your piece in the book is bleak.
Thank you.
I find it really like hopeful and open and looking to the future with, if not full optimism, definitely room for something exciting and interesting to come of like self-introspection and a conversation at large. So it's like, don't sell yourself short on that. You're not bleak
writing it.
Fair enough.
But no, thank you. Yes, I suppose it is not all bleak.
And Suki?
I'm still really struggling to come to an answer. I think, as you were saying, it's difficult to kind of like fall down on like what I personally want and like what I think is good. And maybe that's like part of the problem. Like there's a lot of focus on like what is, I guess, like talking about like acceptability and stuff, like what is good for the cause of what being accepted by like society. I think that kind of has driven like some like queer literature for a while. And maybe it's like stepping away from that and being like, writing this story, I felt a lot of that. I was like, this guy is awful. Is this really bad? And I'm like, bad for what? Bad for who? Like, yeah, I guess like trying to step away from like almost having that concern or worry, and just being like, yeah, hearing people's more personal, like sometimes ugly or difficult or like intersectional, like weird experiences, like just people writing what they personally want to see in the world, maybe, rather than like what is going to be good for this unwinnable cause of of like, yeah, integrating into, you know, heteronormative society, which is never going to work really for queerness. So that would be my answer.
So a villain era is what you're all saying.
Yes.
Brilliant. On that note of a burgeoning villain era for queer literature, I just want to thank you all again for coming out to tonight's event. It means the world. I'd like to thank all our writers, Lakshmi AJ, Colin McGuire, and Suki Hollywood. And I'd like to thank Lou for doing the BSL, and also Lighthouse Books for hosting us. It's been wonderful. There are now drinks next door, which you're all invited to, and there's also going to be a book signing table if you wanna flex your signatures. So surprise. So yes, thank you again so much. I hope you enjoyed the book. We think it's really fantastic, and we hope you do too. Thank you.